Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 326. Not gonna lie, and Amanda would agree with me, this one is it. Possibly best episode of all time, strong contender to say the least. Amanda and I are beaming throughout this entire episode, and I think you will be too. We talked to Seri Robinson, who is a wood scientist, and wow. Enough. That's it. I'm not even going to promo anything. That's how excited I am for you all to hear this. That's it. Here we go. Normally we don't do notes, but I think between the two of us, we have a Google Doc with 2 pages worth of questions and notes. So you're hitting the sweet spot between our geekiness here.
Oh, yeah.
This is everything you've written in fine woodworking is wildly interesting to us. And I don't know if that says more about you or us, but I just, like, right off the bat, what do you do every day? As like, how do you define yourself? Are you a wood scientist? Are you a...
I think it depends on who I'm talking to, because I have degrees across sort of the gauntlet, right? And so I have an art degree in woodworking where I focused on wood turning. So
yes.
I've done sculpture for a lot of my life. So I do a lot of wood turning. I do a lot of sculpture, which would be honestly how I would prefer to spend most of my time. But I also have a master's and a PhD in, forest science, where I focus on wood science and wood anatomy and wood microbial interactions. So I do that. And I identify wood professionally for like court cases and insurance companies. So I do a lot of wood ID, like the microscopic level. So there's a lot, and obviously I had to be a woodworker just as part of it. So I wouldn't consider myself a professional woodworker, wood turner. Yes. Woodworker. I've built the furniture in my house. I have a wood shop. I have to teach it on occasion when we are short-staffed, the furniture classes. But yeah, mostly sculptor, scientist.
Okay.
In my free time, I write science fiction and fantasy books that do pretty well too. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Far and away the most interesting person I have known or talked to so far. So we're off to a great start.
You want to know something? My Banner sci-fi series, the tech in it is wood science. So everything's made out of cellulose, and like all the tech in it's like real stuff that we play with here. That's just like not commercial enough to ever make it in the real world. But I stuck it in there. So it's like wood in space.
Okay. So we need links. We're going to put links.
Absolutely.
This is already not going anywhere near where I thought it was going to go as a conversation.
We were going to talk about licking wood, weren't we? Wasn't that?
Yeah. We specifically emailed that, I remember.
For the first time, the answer is yes. Yes to that. So day to day, you teach most of the time? Or?
No, I'm at a research university. So that's a pretty common misconception. There are 2 kinds of universities. Well, there's lots, I'm sure, but teaching research universities versus the teaching universities are most of your work is teaching. And then maybe you do a little like research on the side, but OSU is a research university. And so most professors' primary job is to remain experts in their field. And then you will have a lesser portion of teaching. So research or scholarship or art is it's like the hallmark kind of what we do. So I do teach, and I teach far more, I think, than I probably should. But output, like research output and scholarly artistic output, is the larger percentage of my job.
What's your primary focus right now in research?
It's been spalting forever. I mean, that's what I'm known for, right? Is
Dr. Spalting.
Dr. Spalting. There. I made that name up because I wanted to get ahead of it. When I saw it was getting really popular, I was like, I don't want to be called like Queen of Spalt or any of that. No, it's not. No, I'm professional. It's Dr. Spalting.
Yeah.
That's important.
Let's get this hierarchy out of the way right now.
You think of all the superheroes that didn't get ahead of their name, and now they've got they're called Captain Underpants or something, right? Like, I don't want that for myself. Got a plan.
Captain Underpants is a strong superhero, though.
So do you have any spalting, like, related characters in in the sci-fi novels?
So by like book 3, there's definitely some Easter eggs in there. There's we get to erase it because the whole like galaxy is based on wood tech, right? So there's wood everywhere, cellulose. So I was like, so clearly we have to have sentient fungi that eat it, because that would be hilarious. Space fungi that eat your spaceships. And so there is one that has like, it's like a named character, and I named it after one of the spalting fungi that I use, and it secretes the color. And so when it gets agitated, it just like shoots color at people, which I thought was pretty funny. No one's going to get it except for me, but I was highly amused.
I love this. Oh my God.
So we're talking about spalting. That was like, you had written an article over a decade ago, I think, right? On
I was a baby. I was in grad school.
So spalting is always one of those things that just happens and you have no control over it, and it's just the destiny of the wood, right? But you're like, nah, no, I'm not okay with being in the passenger seat here. So you are, a lot of the work that you've done is finding ways of spalting and controlling spalting and making it happen, right?
Yeah. And it's really not that hard, honestly. People have been working with spalted wood for centuries, and people have been extracting the pigment out of spalted wood since the late 1700s. So it's not like any of this is new. It's just no one, I think I don't know. People didn't really talk about it, and it was part of old guild systems in Germany. So it kind of got lost with the Industrial Revolution. But people love spalted wood, and
you say they were extracting the pigment out of spalted wood. Were they then using that as a dye stuffs or something for something?
We don't know what they did with it. It was alchemy at the time, right? You got to remember that in this time, like, we didn't even have chemistry. Like, there was like magic and there was alchemy, and it was like, let's switch one.
So it was like mixed with an eye of new, and then
there's this pretty blue-green color in wood, and we kind of know what solvents are. So if we hit it with this like, caustic something or other, now we have a caustic something or other. That's a pretty color. Well, wasn't that exciting? We don't know what they did with it. I'm guessing it was just I did a thing.
Yeah.
Chemists. I did a thing. And then that's all we know, because they published on it. Like, you can now with a Google Translate, we can go through and like read those old papers pretty easily. There's like old papers in like Latin and German and stuff about doing the extractions. So yeah, but putting it back on, all spalting is a secretion, and that's really hard. I think people have a really hard time with separating the fungus from the action. So people always think spalting is the fungi, but it's not. It's the effect of the fungi. So the fungi have to grow and decay the wood, and then they secrete pigment to hold their resource as like a, fence or a boundary line. But the fungus is not the spalting, it's the secretion. And so you can just collect the secretion and reapply it. It still isn't going to go where you want it to go, but it will at least take the decay portion out of it, because that's what everyone wanted. They wanted to be able to build with spalted wood without the decay. And so that involves just gathering the secretion yourself.
What's the process? Is it a highly humid environment? Is there a certain temperature you're holding everything at? I assume that because the fungi's living, right? I assume that there's a set of parameters that you have to hit in order to let it do its thing, right?
Every fungus has its own moisture content and temperature and stuff that it likes. But again, you're thinking about growing fungi, not about spalting. They're two completely different things. And it takes a while for people to wrap their heads around it. Like, what you would do to grow a mushroom to eat, what you would do to get a fungus to grow has nothing to do with spalting. In fact, it's the dead opposite, because spalting is a stress response. So if you want to grow them on wood, you have to stress them out. But I would argue against even bothering growing them on wood, because what you really want is their pigment. That's the spalting, not the growth. So when you extract the pigment itself, so you can grow them in the lab or you can find them in the forest, and you take the pigment out, then you can just reapply it pretty easily. So you're right where everyone else is like, but there was a fungus, and then they're saying not a fungus. So I'm here, but I want to be here. Spalting is fungus puke. You have to collect the puke
That makes more sense to me. See, now we're talking my language.
Spalting
Collect
is
the
the
puke.
honey. The fungus
Okay.
are the bees.
Okay, and the decay is just where the spalting happens to live.
The
But
honeycomb. Yeah.
yes, but okay. So there's the thing, there's the thing where the thing lives, and then there's the effect of the thing.
Yes.
And we're going after the effect of the thing. Okay.
Look at that.
I think I'm an expert.
PhD. Awesome. So that's one thing I do. And then the other thing that sort of accidentally happened is wood science communication. Because I had a kid 10 years ago and I went shopping for wood toys because obviously I work in wood, and I was appalled, absolutely appalled at what was on the market, the amount of tropical woods that were on a market, the amount of finish that was on stuff. And I was like, kids are going to put these in their mouths. What is wrong with you people? How does no one know that you cannot use Purple Heart for a teether? Like, why would you put a finish on a teething toy? What are you doing? How does no one know? And so I started a Facebook group years ago now. And it got so popular so fast, and it just sort of became this, and people had all these questions. So I started adding it into my research. And there's a lot of stuff that, like, wood scientists, we just inherently know. It makes sense. It's like textbook understanding of wood. And then it turns out that no one ever translated that to the general population.
Yeah.
And I can't without like a paper, even though we understand that clearly this is how it works. That the audience always wants like some sort of link to a scientific paper. So just setting up these like literally silly little science tests, like with the cutting board test, we just made tiny little square boards and we stamped them on Petri dishes. We were like, all right, this one's got salmonella, this one's got listeria. Stamp. Look, it's true. But that has become like a not insubstantial part of my job. And the number of emails I get, especially from people who are homeschooling or like stay-at-home parents and stuff who really have pulled their children out due to concerns over lead or other things like that, maybe in areas that don't have as good an infrastructure, and asking about, well, I thought wood toys were safer, but XYZ happened. Can you tell me about it? Like, for a while, fiddle necklaces were really popular. I don't know if you know about those for like teething babies. So like as the baby got older, to kind of keep them, make sure they ate long enough, it would be like something they could play with while they were nursing.
Oh, yeah.
Were pretty big, and they were meant for teething too. So like if you're just holding your kid, maybe your kid could like pick up the teether and it's on you so they can't throw it. But some of those that you could buy, they would have like a little wool ball in them with like some sort of essential oil in it. And a lot of those come from wood, and they're the toxic part of wood, or they'd be made out of a scented wood, like a cedar or a juniper, which are all really toxic. And then people will be like, every time my kid tees on this teaser, he pukes. Like, what's going on with that? And I'd be like, oh, that's because you're poisoning him. So maybe let's not. And just because sellers don't know and people don't know. So I ended up doing a lot of, let's talk about wood and how it works, and like, why does it have smell and color and all those things? What do they do in the world?
You mentioned at the beginning doing like insurance cases and court cases identifying wood. Is that where that ties in, or?
That's different. I don't know. Maybe I think all professors usually, if you're like known as an expert, you usually get tapped for that kind of stuff on and off. It comes and goes. I do like fun projects sometimes. Like one of the last ones I did was there's a railroad society in I think North Carolina, and they want to rebuild their boxcars with the same wood as the old boxcars. So how do we identify that? That was really fun. But I've been on a number of them where, like, I don't know, someone wants a teak deck, right? And they've paid, they want durability, but they want to tell their friends they have a teak deck. And then the builder comes in and they use something and they're like, we don't think this is teak. And then they'll send it to me and I'll be like, no, it's not teak, it's ipe. But like functionally it's the same. Like, you're fine. It's probably more expensive. But then we want teak, so there'll be that kind of stuff. I've done like lawsuit type things where there's been injury due to wood decay. Those kind of things where they need someone to come in and be like, yes, it's decayed, or no, it's not decayed, or this is how the decay works.
Wow.
So when does the wood science mystery book come about? When there's like the detective?
It's next year. I did a murder mystery series. I thought it was pretty funny.
Oh, this is great.
It's
So,
going to be all extractive based. It's all going to be like following the extractives to the murder weapon.
wow. Okay, so you are now the host. Um, Amanda and I are just here for the ride. So, I'm gonna open up the notes because I think I had a whole thing about extractives. But yeah. So let's talk about the toxicity article that you did. I didn't put a issue number on this. Let's see. You did this in issue number 304, so not that long ago. And like, are we safe to say that dark woods are bad?
I don't like not, there's never 100% rule, right?
Sure, of course.
But you have to really think about if a wood has a color or a smell or a heaviness to it, why? Why does it have that, right? Because functionally, if you break wood down, if you took out all the differences in growth, all the differences in stress, all the genetic differences, wood would all weigh the same. It'd all be the same color and the same weight. It's all the same, like sort of cellulose, hemicellulose, lignin matrix. And then where it starts to change is genetically controlled or things happen in the environment or things like that. And so why isn't it sort of a light white thing? Why? Well, not always, but usually that's because of where it's growing and it's some sort of defense, right? That has evolved to deal with whatever's native in that area, fungi or bears or whatever is going to hurt the tree. And so then you have to think, okay, so what did it evolve to protect against and how close am I related to that thing? And this is a hard jump for people sometimes because they're like, well, if it, is meant to be antibacterial or antifungal, how does that affect me? Most of those things also are anti-insectoidal, and that's in our kingdom. So now we're in the same kingdom. And there's definitely effects on even mammals for some of this stuff because rodents will chew and deer will chew and things like that. So there's plenty of stuff meant for mammals. So now we're getting even closer, right?
Uh-huh.
So you just have to kind of think, you gotta think it through. But generally speaking, dark woods are not the best for you to be licking. They're like, you want to make furniture out of it, you go for it. But when we talk about wood in the kitchen, which is where I end up answering a lot of questions, wood in the kitchen or wood for children, that's going to be unfinished because they're teething. That stuff, those extractives, they're called extractives because they extract. And so anytime you get them wet and hot, hot pressure, hot abrasion, they're going to come out. And do you want them in you? I will say the exception is going to be things like fruit woods, which tend to be dark colored. But humans and fruit have kind of we've had this beautiful relationship for so long that I don't know if we just don't care about the extractives anymore or what, but I haven't seen really any literature about problems with dark colored fruit woods. So apple's brown, but we've communed with apple trees for centuries. So I don't know if we're just more used to it or what, but there are some exceptions, but
so specifically I've always been bothered by the smell of walnut wood, but I have a nephew who is allergic to everything. And, but I'm almost positive probably 10 years ago, I'm just about certain I made him something out of walnut thinking, okay, well it's the wood. He is allergic to walnuts and all tree nuts. But I didn't think it would be necessarily a problem. But it sounds like walnut is more likely to have irritants and extractants or extractives or whatever. But there's actually legitimately some elements to walnut that are concerning.
Yeah. And it's not related to the tree nut allergy. That'll be a different subsection, but yes. And I know that that's really hard for people to hear. But walnut is a known sensitizer, and there's plenty of, allergies kind of go like sensitize allergies, then anaphylaxis, and sort of like you want to stop it obviously before it hits that stage, but it's very easy to become sensitized to a walnut or like any wood. You can become sensitized to any wood. But yeah, walnut does have some issues, and the science is still really out on how much walnut is too much. And so we're actually working on that right now, kind of looking at what's coming out in random cooking applications, because juglone, which is the known problematic extractive in walnut, kills horses and things like that. That doesn't water extract very well. So that's there, but that's not going to be one that comes out when cooking. But there are plenty that do come out, because if you stick a piece of walnut in a glass of water and come back the next day, the water will be brown. So it's very clear that things are extracting. But if there's lots of times these things aren't investigated, because if they don't kill acutely,
okay,
they're not, the FDA is not going to care much about them. But yeah, walnut is a mainstay of high school shops and gifts from grandpas, in cutting boards, in wood blocks. You don't want to use a synthetic dye, so you use walnut, teethers and things like that. The one thing I always ask people to think about is, as a grown adult, you can make your own choices, right? So what you choose to use and what you choose to put in your body is entirely your choice. But children and your guests don't have that same autonomy. And so if you make a walnut teether and you give it to a baby, first of all, their body is much smaller, so the dose effect is going to be much bigger. But two, they can't consent to the damage that could cause. And it's the same if you have a cutting board that you're preparing things on for your guests and you're pulling stuff up in there, or you have a walnut cooking spoon and you're making pasta, your guests haven't consented necessarily to that, and you don't know what their sensitivities are. So people sometimes think, oh, you just don't want us to use walnut anymore. You can use walnut for whatever you want, but it's much like shop safety and dust safety. It's consent based, right? You can consent for yourself, but you can't consent for others.
Yeah. And I think you're trying to drive down the market value of walnut, which Amanda appreciates.
I'll take it. Yeah. I'll keep building furniture in walnut. No problem.
Yeah. So you're not making a walnut cutting board. You're not making a walnut teether. You're not making, but okay, if you're turning walnut for a decorative thing, sculpture, what's your PPE situation?
Well, the same as it'd be with any wood. I'm allergic to everything. So, all wood is toxic to me functionally. Breathing is toxic to me. I don't do well with life. My body's not compatible with living. But the second I'm done in the shop, I shower. Like, I can't have the dust on me all day. And anyone who's a longtime woodworker, most of them sensitize to woods over time. And it's not just the cedars and things like that. There's plenty of woodworkers who can't work with walnut anymore, who worked with it quite a bit and now can't be anywhere near it. And if you persist, if it goes from I get a little itchy, if you keep going, it goes from I get a little itchy to now my lungs close up and I can't be within a mile radius of it. So I like to get it off as soon as possible. I always have stuff on my head. PPE is very important to me to begin with, so there's always safety glasses. I always have a respirator. I'm making eye contact with all of you people. Wear a respirator in the shop, even if you're not cutting.
You looked into my soul when you did that.
There's so much science on it. The science is clear. It's in consensus. That almost never happens. Wood dust is terrible for you. Put something on your face.
I feel like I need to change my work from home situation right now, because it's my shop.
And the particulate that you can't see that's hurting you can hang in the air for up to 3 days.
What?
Okay, this is taking a turn. I don't like this interview anymore.
When I teach classes to adults on wood tech stuff, I always tell them that it's just going to be crushing your dreams. It's just going to be several hours now of crushing your dreams.
Okay, I'm in. We're on this ride.
We signed up for this, yeah.
We can't. Amanda can't use walnut anymore, and I am currently absorbing last night's work.
Get it deep into those alveoli, right in the bloodstream. It'd be great. Did you cut some Purple Heart? That's even better.
No Purple Heart. All cherry, but okay. So doctor's orders, wear your respirator. Just in general.
Like the second you walk into the shop, even if it's the next morning, you just got to put it on. Or you could have like a really good dust collection system, but 90% of home shops have not
bothered
to do that.
Have you, I I know this isn't your field of study. Have you looked into, do the air filter things do more good or harm in your experience?
Yeah, I don't think they're doing harm, but I don't think they're doing what you think they're doing either. They're taking big stuff out, and that's okay.
Okay.
But the little stuff, I mean, point of generation collection is where it's at.
Yeah.
And while I I want to be very clear that no one endorses me or gives me money or sends me anything, although they could if they wanted to, and I 100% can be bribed. I will say that I've been really, our shop here at the university that we teach students in, even though it's really expensive, we've been moving over to Festool just because of the point of generation dust collection can't be beat. Like everything, their routers and all that stuff have the port.
Yeah, it's designed around it.
It's way better for the students' health.
Yeah.
And they don't make good choices, right? Because I have to constantly go around and think, where's your mask? Where's your mask? Oh, you don't have it. You have to leave. So anything we can do to, help
kids
them.
These age are supposed to have the where's the mask thing ingrained in them. Just continue on from a few years ago and right?
COVID's bad, but not dust, I guess.
Yeah. So, one thing that I was really surprised about in your toxicity article was things like Spanish cedar being a sedative. That's legit. Of course it is. It's science. You wrote it and you're not going to argue against yourself, but how is it a sedative?
It makes you sleepy. The smell makes you sleepy.
There's so many different elements of these extractives that have wild effects that I was just very, very surprised to read about.
Well, you have to think about size too, right? So a lot of cedars are quite toxic. And so it may make you sleepy, but it'll kill a gerbil, right? So the reason that people thought that all those small animals, rabbits and guinea pigs and stuff had such a short lifespan, like a year or two, in the 80s when I was growing up, is because they put them on cedar shavings and the smell killed them, because house rabbits can live 10 plus years, but not if you put them on cedar shavings, because their respiratory systems go into distress. And so you get sleepy, but a rabbit dies.
So people are putting them on cedar shavings in order to cover or mask the odor of the animal or something or whatever, or to be fancy. And this comes back to, I've always known, if you're using walnut, make sure you don't use it for chicken bedding or horse bedding or things like that. So, because these are the things that at, a rabbit size, oh my goodness, is just going to take it out.
Yep.
Wow.
And you're bigger, right? And you're not on it 24/7. So it's not like you're sleeping on it. But people who work in cedar shingle mills develop terrible responses to cedar, to the point where they can't be around it or their lungs close up. So it's just one of those. It's about your size and your body's natural chemistry, because, it's like how some people can smoke for 40 years and be fine, and one person has a cigarette once and they get cancer. It's like that. So it's your size and your exposure and then your unique genetics.
What's your favorite oddball toxicity in a wood?
There are a number of woods that have reproductive effects, particularly in terms of reducing sperm motility. And I always make sure to put those in, because there's a million woods with a bunch of different things. But when I have to select a list, I always put those in, because that is the only thing that will get people to take it seriously. The second I start talking about decreased sperm motility, people are like, oh, okay, this is real serious. And I'm like,
now I'm wearing the respirator.
Because anaphylactic shock wasn't serious, but sperm motility.
Sperm motility.
So that
affect
one
me personally, but it's funny.
But that one punches above its weight in terms of getting the message through.
Yes.
That's great.
The other one is camphor. People are really into camphor, very strong smell, but think about the things that have the camphor essence in them traditionally, things like Vicks VapoRub, that kill, that is a deadly, deadly thing. It says do not use in children under 3 because it will just flat out kill them. And if you put on too much of the surface area of your body, you'll end up in the hospital. A lot of those like really aromatic compounds are just so deadly. And camphor is used across Australia for cutting boards and a lot of interior woodwork. And I'm just like, all right, well, you do you, I guess. Everything kills you in your country, so maybe you don't care about camphor.
I was confused reading that article though, because I've never heard of camphor as a wood. So that's mostly used in Australia, not
The big Australian wood, yeah.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, it sounds like really bad stuff.
It smells great.
It is calming, yes. It does have an effect.
I had a question because when I lived in Texas, I was working in a few shops that didn't have AC, and I'd be sweaty and then covered in dust, and it was like I was always itching, and like it didn't matter what species it was. I just was like extra irritating. So I was wondering if that's like it's basically extractants, like because of the moisture on your skin. Is that basically what's happening?
Heat makes them move faster and extract faster. So
it's like the perfect storm.
The only thing that could have been better is teething or boiling water. So teething is hot, wet, and abrasion, right?
Okay.
So you're constantly working down a new layer of wood to expose more extractives. The other one is like if you're making pasta and things like that, because you've got a cooking spoon, and we all have left it in the pot of boiling water. Like, let's come to terms with that, right?
Yeah, of course.
We've all done it. And so you're functionally steam bending at that point, right? You've got a pot of boiling water and wood. So you've got heat, wetness, the pressure from the boiling that's pulling the extractives out. And then if it's pasta, you have the added benefit of the pasta absorbing whatever is in the water.
Oh.
So that's like a direct, like, oral intake then too.
Oh, wow.
There's so much to think about. So getting to Amanda's problem though, you had mentioned in the Toxicity article, applying unscented lotion. And is that just like creating a little bit of a barrier or?
Yeah, it can be if you have to put on a lot. And so I wear quite a bit of unscented lotion like on my face, just because I can wash my hands and arms pretty well, and shirts cover stuff, but my face can be really hard to protect in the shop, even with all the PPE. And so I tend to put on a pretty thick layer of just like a Curel unscented, I don't know, something that's not going to make you break out. And if you put it on pretty thick, I mean, your face looks oily, so you got to deal with that. But it can help with keeping things from like really getting in there, and you have to kind of sweat through the lotion before it comes out. I'm not saying it's attractive. I'm just saying it works.
Yeah.
And reading it really, we've talked about cedar, but I have a Instagram buddy, Andrew, who, makes these beautiful cedar tubs. But he wears the whole ventilated hood thing. And as I was reading it, I was like, I need to tell Andrew. And then I remember that he wears the whole ventilated hood thing. And I mean, I guess that's the holy grail for, where you're covered from the dust. You've got a HEPA filter attached to your air supply. Is that something that you recommend?
That's a kind of a complicated question. First of all, none of those fit my head.
Okay.
Because I have a small head. Until they start making them for children, there's a sizable portion of the population that can't wear them.
Gotcha.
They've come a long way. They used to have not good filters. And so I was like, please don't do that. They have better filters now. That will protect you from the wood dust. But you have to, it's going to depend on the cartridge. Remember, some extractives are aromatic. Like in cedar, they're aromatic. It's a smell. Okay. So it's a volatile organic compound, right? There's a VOC. So that's a different type of filtration sometimes than, and a really good HEPA may get it. It just depends. They all have kind of different filters in them.
It really is as simple as I remember. I think I was doing a video on ammonia fuming, and it was, the answer was, if you can smell the ammonia, your mask isn't appropriate for it. So if you can smell the cedar.
Mm-hmm. But first off, you'll become immune to the smell pretty quick. So you gotta.
Oh, come on. All right. It's really complicated.
Yeah. Those kinds of masks are really nice. And I know people really like them. Again, they don't make any that fit my head, so I haven't had a lot of experience with them. Because I would turn more than anything, I tend to go with well-fitted N95, the ellipse. They're a small profile. Again, tiny head. I have issues, right? So an ellipse and then safety glasses and then a full face shield over.
Okay.
And that tends to work pretty well for me too.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, wood turning, you're exposing yourself to so much shavings and, like, you're standing right in it. So it has to be, you're the person to ask about PPE. And yeah, that's crazy.
My students, like, have a really hard time. We're about to start a new year cycle, right? So fall term, the intro wood turning students, they're always like, they don't want to wear the PPE. We got to go through this whole like, well, I don't wear it in my dad's shop, or my grandpa never wore it, or I can't, my glasses are fogging, which is just a mask fitting problem more than anything. I don't want to wear it. And so we fight for a couple weeks, and they're all real cautious at first. And then we get to week 4 and they're starting to trust the lathes. And then the first student will have something come at their face, right? And push them back with their face shield on. And after that, I don't have any more problems with PPE, and it's all fine. But the fight over that like sort of 18, 19, 20-year-old, nothing can kill me, I'm too young. It doesn't matter if this is, I'll tell them like, but in 20 years, this like will really screw you up. And then, well, I don't plan on living that long. The number of students, well, I don't plan on living that long.
Yeah.
Your family might care.
Yeah. Oh, the things that we do in our youth.
Mm-hmm.
Woodworkers, from professionals to hobbyists, know the satisfaction of a job well done. Woodcraft will soon be bringing you a new way to turn every project into something rewarding. Introducing Toolbox Rewards. It's free to join, and you'll gain instant access to special offers and members-only rewards. Visit woodcraft.com/toolboxrewards and sign up for email alerts so you can be among the first to get on the list. That's woodcraft.com/toolboxrewards. One word. It's just another way. Since 1928, Woodcraft has been helping you make wood work. Regardless of your skill level in woodworking or home repair, you want a glue that you can trust. Because a glue that doesn't work can ruin any project in a hurry. Fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp times, to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond for the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit titebond.com, Titebond.com. Amanda, you have a really interesting question written down here about the flitches that I want the answer to. So if you were planning on skipping over it, I'm going to come back.
Well, so a few years ago, I was working with we got this flitch of walnut, and I felt like I had the flu. Like, it was so bad, and I didn't know what was going on for like 2 weeks. We were doing a production run of something, and it did not stop until that walnut was like out of the shop. And then I've been pretty much fine with walnut since then. So, and is there a different, like, is that an environmental thing? Like, that walnut in particular was sitting in an environment where it's producing like a different level of extractants, or
So common names are hard because every region has its own common name. So what I'm doing right now is trying to figure out what flitch means to you.
A sliced up tree, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it would just be, all these boards came from the same log. We know that.
So flitch is just a manner of cutting. It's not a species.
Yeah.
No. Yeah,
okay.
This was walnut.
Yeah. So it could have been anything. It could have been a high extractive load tree. It could have been, so it grew under stressful conditions in a tight stand. It could have been a yard tree. Yard trees have very different chemical compositions than forest trees. They have much more sapwood. They tend to be a lot easier on people in terms of extractives, because they tend to be lower extractive. But if someone was, they bring things up. So if you were fertilizing your lawn or things like that, there could be other crap in there. It was probably whatever region you got them from changed the chemical composition inside. I will warn you, though, that if you've had one reaction to walnut, you will have more. So you can expect that to increase over time. That was a warning.
Okay. It's good to know.
So, extractives are the tree's defense mechanism.
Mhm.
So if it's in a stressful living environment, it's more likely. So if there was a bug infestation in the area or something like that, it's more likely to be higher in those harmful extractives. No?
Yes, but for kind of different reasons. So we're mixing up extractives with host response, which are
Okay.
also extractives, but that's like an immune response. So it's sort of like the difference between your bones versus your immune system.
Okay.
So if you are responding to something, you will also have more extractives in that area. But just generally speaking, trees that are grown really tightly together or in stressful conditions, they don't put out as much crown. And the amount of sapwood in a tree, which doesn't tend to have a lot of extractives in it, is relegated. That size, the amount of sapwood is related to the size of the crown of the tree. So if you're growing in a forest, you don't have as wide a crown, so you don't have as much sapwood, so you have more heartwood, which is where a lot of the extractive load is.
Gotcha.
Wow.
This is all so cool. All right. So let's just go there, Amanda. Food safe finishes?
No.
Seri?
No, there aren't any.
Well, okay. First off, food safe finishes is a really strong Google search term for finewoodworking.com. And I'm not cool with what's about to happen. But you are saying, you say it. I can't say it.
It's complicated. The best finish for wood and food contact is no finish.
Okay.
Listen, there's a lot of industries that don't like me, and I understand. The wood flooring industry doesn't like me. The wood finish, the cleaning products industries don't like me. We go off on a whole tangent about all the crap they put in mopping cleaners that screw up the finishes on your wood floor. Like, this is a whole thing. So I'm ready. You know what? I already get tons of hate mail. Bring it on.
Okay. So if we are making a cutting board, we are not allowed to put mineral oil on it anymore, huh?
Well, so I'm not.
But it's so satisfying. And what are we going to do for the Instagram reels?
Have you considered sanding better?
Oh, throwing down. Okay.
I have this conversation with my students all the time. They'll be like, but it'll show the grain. And I'm like, or you could just do better woodworking.
I love that. So what do you recommend sanding to?
I wouldn't go above 400 just because you don't want to be burnishing because you want it to absorb. But honestly, 400 grit and a nice wet sand looks great. If you really need it to like, if you want to sell it at a craft show or something, you can get a little ethanol in a spray jar or a little water in a spray jar and wet it down because they are going to be wet more often than not in a kitchen anyway. Mm-hmm. But we as a people have to come to terms with the fact that we use wood because of its functionality. And yes, it's beautiful and it's lovely, but in a kitchen, it has to work. Mm-hmm. Right? In a table, it can be beautiful. And then you can put like epoxy on it or whatever you want to do and make it all shiny. And that's great. In the kitchen, it has a job. It's like a show dog versus a working dog, right? No one expects their farm dog to be winning beauty contests. It has a job, right? It's got to herd the sheep or keep the wolves off. It's not a doodle of some kind in a show. So your wood is supposed to work, and it can't work if you put a finish on it. And in fact, it works. It's like negative work. It like breeds bacteria when you put a finish on it.
All right. So what is happening to an unfinished piece of wood? I'm putting a chunk of meat on it and cutting it up, cooking it. And you just say, just rinse it off and move on with your life. Mm-hmm. So doesn't matter. Just rinse it off. Make sure it can dry uniformly on all sides. Wire rack. That's it. And I think there's no chance without a PhD, I'm believing someone saying that. So
Think of all the time I just saved you in the kitchen.
Well,
I like that take.
Yeah. But like, what is happening then? What's happening in the wire rack?
So, well, if we use the horrible analogy that wood is a collection of straws, I don't like it, but we can work with that. So if wood is mostly straws that run up and down, but there's some straws that run this way and those are the rays. We won't get into that. It's mostly a collection of straws, and wood has this unique property. It's hygroscopic, right? And so even when it's dead, we're going to anthropomorphize wood. So please, no other scientists watching this get mad at me for what I'm about to explain. We're going to pretend for the purposes of this that it's like living, but it's not. Wood always wants to be balanced with its moisture. So if you have a straw and you, drop some water here, it's not just going to run all the way through. It wants to be even, right? The piece of wood always wants to have like kind of the same amount of moisture with its surroundings and within the wood. So it's hygroscopic. And this is fantastic because it means that, if you have a cutting board and you put a big juicy steak on it and it's unfinished, immediately what will happen is, there's blood, right, on the surface. The steak is bleeding and the wood is going to start pulling that blood down inside and distributing it evenly across the piece. And so it's keeping the surface clean because the bacteria go down with it and they get trapped inside and die. And this is old science, guys. We have known this for, I don't even know, 30 years. Like, this is not some new random thing. It is very well understood that the wood does this and the bacteria is not recoverable. Like they've cut into cutting boards and tried to re-isolate the bacteria. No, it's dead. It's gone. And so, you take the steak off and then, so there's stuff on the surface. You may go faster, rinse it, get some water on it, and then leave it on a rack so it can have airflow. And in 24 to 48 hours, it's all equilibrated out. The bacteria is gone. It's done. If it stains, don't worry about it because after a few more uses, that stain will go down too. It's just always clean. You don't even need to use soap. You can, it's not going to hurt anything, but science has shown us that no soap doesn't matter because the soap isn't what's doing the action. I will say the soap can get rid of some of the fat. So I will use soap on occasion if it's like a really fatty something I'm cutting.
Okay.
And because of this, all that sort of internet conventional wisdom, which is honestly almost always wrong anyway.
The internet?
Yeah.
Never.
It's good. So people are always like, if you're going to make a cutting board, you should make it out of white oak because, it's not as, all the pores are all blocked up with the tyloses versus red oak, which is really porous, which is completely the opposite, right? Red oak by far works the best because all those straws are open. And so it's just like this bacteria superhighway that it can move down through. Whereas white oak, it still works. They all work. White oak doesn't work nearly as quickly because a lot of its vessels are blocked.
So, yeah. So in your article, you said like, yes, even oak. Mm-hmm. And I believe you. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just coming to terms with what you say. I've always thought that we didn't use open pored woods in food grade woodworking because stuff gets down in the pores.
But that's what we want to happen.
And that's exactly like you do know that everything you're saying is scientifically sound and everything, I'm sure, but it sounds very wrong the first time you hear it. It's
wild to me because any wood scientist you talk to would be like, of course it works that way.
But we don't do that. You're the first one.
Why don't our people talk? I'm in both spheres, right? And
you're great at it. This is like perfect pod. So like this is
our people got to get together more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because woodworkers live in this mythology, right? And I think a lot of it comes from if there was an important woodworker somewhere along the way who said something, people took it as gospel truth. But woodworkers are not wood scientists for the most part. Some of them are. Like, we exist. But you can be really good at woodworking and not even remotely understand the science of the material. You might understand like a little bit about the anatomy of it, but like it's a science for a reason. It's a whole like tons of people have dedicated their lives to studying this material and understand how it works. And just because, you can make a table doesn't necessarily mean that you also can sit there and talk about how bacteria move through cellular systems.
Okay. That is true.
Absolutely.
Like,
So-
I'm not going to argue with you about how to make fancy Japanese joinery. And then you just don't argue with me about bacteria and wood. And I feel like we'll all get along just fine.
Absolutely. This is great. Understanding, even though I don't know anything about fancy Japanese joinery, but Amanda probably does. So, okay. So glue in a cutting board. It's
No.
Can we do end grain cutting boards so the glue is relative to the surface area small? No.
So much glue if you do an end grain cutting board. Like, my God.
But isn't it seeping down and not sideways?
Yeah, that was my question.
Okay, so yeah, Amanda's backing me up. We have a question.
Now I'm afraid to say it though, because it includes the words "bunch of straws."
This is a judgment-free zone.
I wondered if Ben caught that. I was like, oh, immediately no. But so yeah, you wrote that glue impairs the ability to move moisture, but end grain's like a bunch of straws, or I don't know what you would call it instead. So does that counteract that at all? Because it's no,
because you have glue everywhere. And all those lines of glue, the microbes can't move. And so what do? They grow and they multiply. And so if you like did a test where you took like if you just had like a regular, like a wood cookie, right? So there's no glue lines on it. You put bacteria on it, and then you had a end grain cutting board with I've seen like the butcher block ones where it's like 800 squares, right? Or whatever.
They're beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, they're lovely. No one is arguing with the artistry. I'm going to do another. Yeah. I'm not here to take your pretty cutting boards from you. All right. You do it. They just look really nice on a wall. Give them as breadboards. They're lovely gifts.
Yeah.
But if you took those and you cut a stake on both of them, and then you stamp them on some nutrient plates to see where the bacteria are, there wouldn't be any bacteria on the cookie. And the bacteria lines on the glue up would be in lines right where the glue is.
Because it's pooling right there. It is. Mm-hmm. It's trying to get to disperse, but it can't.
Nope. And
because there's a film, like a plastic film.
But it's a porous film. This is the thing. It's not contiguous. So just like plastics, you're going to cut it, right? And it's going to have checks in it, and the bacteria gets trapped in there, and it's not wood, and it doesn't die. Because it's right on the surface. So every time it gets water in it, it grows and it gets more food trapped in it and it harbors bacteria. That's a problem with plastic cutting boards too, is right, you cut on them. Or if you put a finish on wood boards, you cut through it and then things get trapped under it. Other than the fact that the finishes grow bacteria regardless. Every time you cut, you're scoring underneath it. But now the wood can't equilibrate with its environment because you've sealed it off from the outside. It can take on a little bit of air moisture, but not a lot. So now everything's festering underneath. And that's where you get all those mold streaks on your cutting boards. That's why everyone's like, wood will warp if you get it too wet and blah, blah. No. Unfinished wood, like boards, you take care of them properly. They don't warp. They don't mold. They don't discolor. They're fine if you just leave it alone.
The passion is just,
oh my God,
it's inspiring.
Just stop.
So, as soon as I found woodworking, I became an elitist about all things wood. And
this is why you wait for fine woodworking, is it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and I have just looked upon every cutting board with disgust. If it's not a beautiful end grain cutting board that is like all sorts of whatevers and everything. And it's like my parents used the same apple or cherry wood long grain cutting board for the past 50 years. And I've just been like, you're living like animals, but they're doing it right. And well, to be honest with you, I've never made a cutting board. I just really like looking at them, and
you just judge them.
I use a plastic cutting board, but I'm just judgy in general. So, yeah, but so the long grain cutting board is just, that's the way to go.
Can we just backtrack to the fact that you have a full wood shop and you use a plastic cutting board?
We're not going to talk about it.
Can fine woodworking not make this like a prereq for hiring people?
Well, okay. The same way when I was a musician, I refused to like learn Stairway to Heaven because it was too mainstream. I'm cool, right? So I'm the woodworker who doesn't make a cutting board. because that's my stairway to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
In turn, I have a walnut end-grain cutting board. So I'm not doing it. I'm not doing much better.
It's
honestly.
not even noon here.
So that has now become a breadboard, Amanda, right? You're not allowed to chop meat on it anymore.
No more vegetables on there.
Whoa. Okay. No, we need to talk about this too. Cutting vegetables and meat on the same cutting board.
Yeah.
Doctor says it's good.
Why not?
Just you're breaking all of the conventions.
Well, they're wrong. The vegetables have tons of salmonella and crap on them.
That's
the reason you have to wash them.
So like vegetables are just as icky as meat juice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What I would recommend is that you do tend to cook your meat. You may not cook your vegetables. So maybe just cut the vegetables first, unless you are going to cook them. If you're going to cook them, who cares? Like if you're going to steam them and stuff, it's all just getting cooked out anyway.
It's wild. This is a brave new world we're living in now.
The best cutting board is just a piece of wood and cut in any direction you want. Maybe you route the edges. If you want to get bougie, maybe you do a nice chamfer instead of a round over. You know, there's a whole world of router bits out there waiting for you. Maybe you can make a little juice groove. That's cute. A little router template. I have a Millennium Falcon that I made for my wife. That's nice. I helped pay for the down payment on my house with cutting boards just because people refuse, the makers, not the buyers. Like there's plenty of people who understand this and are looking for solid slab boards and they can't find them anywhere because even people on Etsy are like, no, I'm going to put a finish on it. You don't understand. And they're like, I'm trying to give you the same amount of money to do less work. Send me an unfinished board. I don't want it. And so there's this huge gap of like, makers just refuse, but the buying clientele has really changed because a lot of stay-at-home parents and homeschoolers and people who are really trying to like detox their lives have really, really care. They're more willing to listen to, oh, I understand there's science involved and maybe would work differently than I thought it did.
So here's the future I want to see. I want to go to a crafts fair and I want to see a woodworker selling unfinished cutting boards and educating the buying public about what Dr. Seri, this Dr. Spalting, sorry, is telling us right now, because it's really stinking powerful. And I've got some wooden bowls that friends have made, and the finish has been gone for probably a couple of years now, and yeah, I just rinse them out and stick them on the dry rack. I've always been afraid of soap getting stuck in there or something. I don't know. I just rinse it out. If it's always felt right. But you say that if you cannot help yourself, if you have to put some sort of a finish on something, just a regular old wax,
it'll come off.
Yeah. So like
something dumb that's going to come off. Like if it's one of those, this is how I pay my mortgage and the people in my area aren't ready yet. And it has to be, or like everyone else has finished. So it looks shiny and my wood doesn't look shiny and customers think it needs to look shiny. Okay, fine. Put a wax on it. Because at the very least, after a couple uses, it will come off. You just better tell the people that you're selling it to that the wax is meant to come off, or you're going to have them be like, what do I hear a lot? My wood's dry. And I'm like, what is supposed to be dry? Well, if it was wet, it'd be molding. We've
been marketing that we're supposed to feed wood this whole time.
It's dead. What are you feeding it? You know what you're feeding? You're feeding the fungi and the bacteria that live on it.
Oh, dang.
Is it a zoo or is it a cutting board?
It's up to you. Well-informed woodworker. Right, Amanda?
This is amazing.
I
mean, can we go?
I've learned so much.
Do we have time for a tangent? Because I have like a whole other.
I love that we have not hit tangent mode yet.
No, we haven't. So one of the things that prompted me to make this Facebook group years ago now is I had been in a cleaning group. I don't know why I was in some sort of Facebook cleaning group. I was pregnant, like I was nesting things. I was into cleaning baseboards. I don't know. Pregnant brains do weird things.
Okay.
And I was learning about people, like there was like, what are the best wood floor finishes? People had very strong opinions about what you use to like mop your wood floor. I have never mopped a wood floor in my life. And my grandparents had wood floors. Like I have all wood floors, and I was baffled by this. I was like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? You understand that soap and water exist, right? Like those are things that we use to clean. And they're the best. Yeah. So all these products out there. So I started looking into them, and people were talking about, oh, well, I've been using this one forever, but now like my floors are getting cloudy and I have to mop more frequently, and what's going on, and I have to have them stripped. So I started looking, and I went and I pulled the SDSs on all of these floor cleaners.
Safety data sheets, right?
Oh my gosh, is that a racket? So a lot, not all, but a lot of floor cleaners, they put shiners in them to make the wood look shiny. And, I don't know, whatever the same words they use for hair care, I feel like they use for wood, nourished and hydrated and all that garbage. Also dead, by the way, your hair is also dead. And this guy clearly care about hair, right? And they put all these like waxes and shiners and things in. So when you mop your floor, it looks really shiny. Okay, but what happens to waxes if you don't wear them down and you don't uniformly, right, in a floor? You don't walk around the edges, right? So you're mopping, I don't know, every week because you have kids and pets and whatever. And the wax is building and it builds. And waxes can only build to so much before they dull. But a lot of these waxes harden over time. And so they'd be mopping, maybe once every 2 weeks. And then they noticed that, okay, but now at like week 8 or day 8, it's dull. So that means that the wood needs to be hydrated. So I'm going to mop again. And then the mopping time gets closer and closer and closer, using more and more product until it gets to a point where even after you fresh mop it, it's cloudy. And what happens then? You call in your flooring people and you're like, I don't understand what happened. Like, what do we do? And the flooring people say, oh, you're going to have to strip and refinish. So now you've got a mopping industry that's driving people to refinish, and they have to strip and refinish their wood floors, all of this work. And the Dawn dish soap is right there. But the number of products that have shiners in them, because we've convinced people that wood needs to be shiny and wet and hydrated, is wild. Wood should be dry. It should always be dry because then it doesn't decay.
I've heard that tangent from John Coffey, who is a French polishing guru, and he's just constantly yelling at his clientele, stop using spray wax on this furniture because it's just building up and building up and building up, and then I have to come out and take it off.
Yep.
And yeah, it's wild, the products that were sold that are just entirely unnecessary.
Or how every crafter, it seems like at a craft fair that's selling their cutting boards, will also happily sell you their own finish, right? That's a nice little...
It's a touch. Yeah.
Listen, you got to pay for that booth and you got to feed your family. So yep. I get it. But I mean, come on now. It's just hurting other people. You don't need to buy those conditioners. The best part is most people don't condition their cutting boards, because when people talk to me about this, like, yeah, I bought it, but I'm just too lazy and I don't put it on. I'm like, that's good. Let's run with that.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just changed my perspective on a lot of stuff. It's crazy.
There's just so much to all of it. It's just wild, but like, you communicate it so well and so passionately that but like it was really like that your new article that's coming out is a mind meld. It really is a mind meld. And I remember Asa like talking about it in our staff meetings, and he's like, well, really kind of like don't put finish on at all. And I was like, what? Come on. What is this? Why are we saying this now? And then it was like Mike laid it out or something like that. He's like, yeah, it's pretty convincing. It's pretty sound. It's like, what? And it's wild. It really is. And I know like I'm reacting vividly towards the information, but there is an entire industry that is just shaking its fist towards Oregon right now.
No, I know.
So.
They email me. Don't worry.
Oh man. All right. So let's see.
Honestly, most people have been pretty good. Like I got used to being yelled at pretty early due to spalting because so many people were like, "You're telling people to use fungi and fungi will kill us all." And I was like, "That's not how kingdoms work," but okay. So, this is fine.
Amanda, you had written down a really great question. The last one on the page, which Seri just segued to.
Yeah. So my question was about spalted wood, which you said is safe to use for food items. I was wondering if there's an exception with like the punky areas, the soft, like real porous.
So I always caveat this with, it's not that it's unsafe to lick. It's just, it could fall apart. So the structure of spalted wood is quite damaged. So I just don't recommend it for structural applications. Don't make ladders or houses out of it. But if you have a little spalting in your cutting board, you're just helping the bacteria move faster.
Okay. Cutting board, obviously not. We're not gonna put CA glue in there to make a punky area structurally sound. What about on a sculptural piece? Or
I don't use CA glue. I mean, maybe like if something's really ripping, I don't stabilize my spalted wood. A lot of it is just understanding the material, you can cut it better. There's different ways to hold the tool that are not particularly challenging. It's just a lot of people have turned a lot of tropical woods and a lot of like dense woods and scrapers and carbide tools have made turning really easy, which is fine and very accessible. And I'm very happy for them, but they don't teach you necessarily skill. Mm-hmm. And so if you're used to stabbing a piece of wood like it's a piece of meat and turning it that way, you can't do that with spalted wood. You gotta finesse it. And so if you just use some more of the more traditional tools and go a little slower, it's fine.
Okay.
But yeah, not like I wouldn't use something that's like the density of foam for probably anything other than a sculpture, but all my cutting boards are spalted. I mean, all the wood in my home is spalted. Let's be realistic. It's all the wood I have at this point. But all my kitchen shelving, I have open slab shelving in my kitchen, and it's all like curly spalted wood shelves, 2-inch thick. And at that thickness, a little bit of rot's not a big deal. Plus they're on big iron brackets, and all my cutting boards are spalted. Most of our like charcuterie / like snack plate things, they're all spalted wood. Our salad bowls are all spalted wood. And like the fungi are dead, right? So there's none of this. The fungi are going to get into your food and into your brains. So it's, just sometimes you can't don't beat it around or anything, but it's okay.
Nice.
We've done toxicological testing too. Like this isn't just me talking, out my rear. Like we have actually tried to kill zebrafish embryos with spalted wood and just failed spectacularly every time.
Zebrafish embryos.
It's like stage 1 of toxicological testing is little 96 well plates where you put in a little bit of whatever it is you're testing, and then you put in embryos, zebrafish embryos, because they don't have a spine yet, so they don't fall under the testing requirements. And you just you look to see do they mutate, do they not hatch, do they grow extra tails? It's pretty simple base level testing. You have a wild job.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Is it fun?
I have a lot of fun. I get to, get up in the morning and be like, so is this a day I write about wood in space, wood in the kitchen, or wood with fungus?
That's great. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been my favorite recording session ever.
Really? Yeah.
Well, that does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Seri's article will be coming out in next week's issue of Fine Woodworking 313. And if you are a finewoodworking.com member, an unlimited member, you should have gotten an email inviting you to a live Q&A town hall issue preview thing that is going on tonight, the night that this episode is being released, October 4th. So check that out. Mike, Amanda, and myself will be there talking about the new issue and all of the fun stuff coming out. We sincerely hope to see you at Woodworking in America. If you want to register for Woodworking in America, head on over to the website. It's in the doobly-doo. All right. Send in any questions to shoptalk@finewoodworking.com. Leave a 5-star review on iTunes, thumbs up on YouTube, like, subscribe, all that jazz. We sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you know what? Tell a woodworking friend. Please tell a woodworking friend if you enjoy this and you like what we're doing. Tell them we're up to something good over here. All right. Have a good one.